much for being here. We will be concluding presentations today, so thank you for sticking with us. Today we will be speaking about stress in college campuses. Alrighty, so it's no secret that college students have to deal with a very healthy dose of stress in their lives. As we can see by the Yerkes and Dodson's stress continuum law model right here, we can sort of expect to be somewhere right here in the middle. However, we notice that if we go too far to one way or the other, essentially bad things will start to happen. So it can lead to exhaustion, panic, anxiety, anger, burnout, and breakdown when we become too stressed. Okay. So chronic stress among college students is a norm, but should it be? So how do we facilitate a better environment for students that is challenging but not debilitating, especially in the wake of significant life stressors? There was a Harvard Medical School study that was done in 2018 that encompassed over 100 universities and 67,000 students that were surveyed. And just a few of their findings that I thought were pretty pertinent were that rates of stressful life events were higher and associated with mental health issues. 1 in 4 students reported being diagnosed with or treated for a mental health disorder, and 1/5 thought about suicide. And that is what I would like to call the elephant in the room. Because we can expect that college students are going to have to deal with stress in their daily lives, but what we don't know is how deep and how prevalent that can be. So, next slide. And I think it's important to keep in mind that as we go through our presentation today, that we revisit Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you've ever had a psychology course, you've definitely seen this. I think it's a very good representation of what we strive to be. And if students are stuck having to figure out their basic needs and their psychological needs, how can they expect to perform and excel and flourish if they're stuck in a constant state of stress? And so what we hope to do with our presentation today is to give you a compelling discussion about what we can do about it. So Daleth and Ryan will cover solutions and their implementation plans. Evan will speak to effects and how to cope. And now Mel will tackle some causes more in depth.
Okay, so my slides are on causes of anxiety and stress, and I'm starting like even before college, so hereditary ones. So it's not the only source of anxiety, but it does make you more likely to have, or like it's more likely that you will be affected by stress if one or both of your parents has either anxiety or depression. And then once you have this genetic background, then environmental causes will have different effects on you. Next slide, please. So the first one I got was adverse childhood experiences. Candy did the research for this, thank you. And these are potentially traumatic events that occur in childhood. And with the more ACEs somebody has, it's correlated between stress levels now, and when you have more ACEs, there's been, in a study in 2016, they were shown that there were greater levels of stress in college students who had more ACEs, and they felt like they had lower levels of support, which would also be a cause of stress and anxiety. If you don't feel supported, there's nowhere to lean. A second, more environmental one is the responsibilities we all take on. So moving to college is a really big thing, as I've experienced this year. You have to learn to live on your own while still balancing all your schoolwork. If you have a job, you have to work on that, as well as all the social And events like moving to college are also, they're counted as stressful life events, and that big changes like this it'll exacerbate any anxiety or depression or anything else that is in your genetic background. More than 20% of students report experiencing 6 or more stressful life events in the last year. So that's, the more stress you get, then the more it affects your life. It's strongly associated with mental health diagnosis, self-harm, and suicide. And then this is also higher for any minorities, like either racially or sexually. There's a lot higher rates of stress and anxiety and depression in these students. We also cause our own stress in our responsibilities, and because if you're like me, you like to procrastinate, and at the last minute there's a lot of pressure to get everything done, so that is also. And then a really big part of life nowadays is COVID-19, so I decided I would also address that. With the beginning of the pandemic, we all went into quarantine and increased isolation and loneliness. And increase in these things causes more stress because we're made to be social creatures, and it's really difficult for people, especially like if you're used to being around others all the time, to just suddenly block yourself off from everyone. COVID-19 also caused a lot of job loss, so then it was more stress on where will the money come from so that I can like continue to go to school. Do I have enough money to go to school and then still have time to be in classes, even if they were online? And then families who had essential workers in them, that was even more stressful. I can speak for that personally. My mom is a doctor, and I wasn't allowed to go anywhere very much more than everyone else because I couldn't get my mom sick. Because she was already helping patients and she was a big source of income. And so I really couldn't do anything, and it was stressful. Like, you're constantly worried about, well, if you'll get it, if you'll pass it to somebody else. Yeah, and Evan's going to talk more about what the stress leads to.
As college students, I'm sure we all deal with a lot of stress daily, whether it's schoolwork, figuring out whether or not what's in the cap is edible. It's all stressful. And I'm going to talk about the effects of stress and what it can do to a person and their mental processes. Stress is obviously it's a normal response to an excess of responsibilities. It might just be one responsibility for some people. Stress can affect mental health significantly and lead to severe complications that might require more help. And stress ultimately will lead to depression if one's coping skills are not intact. Stressors and coping. So a heavy workload, which is kind of the name of the game in college, excess of papers, presentations like this one, it will build up very quickly and people will struggle. And some people will struggle earlier than others. Mental health is kind of like a wall. Some people's wall will be thicker than others, but if you continue to throw rocks at the wall, like a new assignment, a new challenge with friends, family, that wall will break down eventually. And when you break down that wall, it becomes difficult to continue and handle stress. Stress can be a positive. Like, we all have had small stressors in life, like a short assignment that's due in 30 minutes, you just gotta take a quiz. Our short-term stress response is a positive. It's gonna help allow us to get things done that we may not have been able to get done without that stress. Like, that's why procrastinating is so much easier, because we don't have a certain amount of stress, but when that stress kicks in, it's a lot easier to sit down and do something. long-term or chronic stress can lead to a breakdown, and that's when the complications start to happen. And it's very important as a college student to recognize when your mental health is starting to deteriorate, because it's a quick downhill spiral. And those with fewer coping skills will eventually become depressed or show tendencies of depression. And this is from the Mayo Clinic. I really like their article on it because it's coming straight from people with professional advice on this. Next slide. I want to talk about this chart first. This is about depression in college students in the past 4 years. So it's people who graduated in 2017. 80% of students report that they feel stressed on a daily basis, which sounds pretty typical. Like, I mean, some people have very easy majors. I'm sure you engineers in here are stressed every day. 13% have felt depressed at some point in the past 3 months. And I mean, me personally, I've definitely felt those effects. I'm sure many of you in this room have felt depressed at some point or another. 13% have been diagnosed with a mental health condition relating to anxiety. And the crazy one for me is 9% of kids have contemplated suicide in the past year, and that's just college students alone. And that kind of puts an emphasis on how important it is to take care of yourself and handle those challenges well. Depression ultimately will affect mood, concentration, and relationships. I'm sure many of you that have felt depressed in the past, you find it hard to sit down and do your work. You can't study, you can't focus, you don't want to go meet people, and that just makes it worse, because when you're struggling to find connection with people and all you want to do is sit in your room, that will add up quickly. My personal experience with depression, and I think a lot of people, it's a bi-directional relationship. So when you're feeling depressed, you're going to feel more stressed because you can't get anything done. And that in turn will cause your depression to grow deeper. And then you're going to get more and more stressed. And if somebody does not have coping mechanisms, that can be extremely dangerous. And it goes back to that 9%. You may get to a point where you're not able to handle it, and you think about extreme situations. Breaking the cycle it's difficult. You have to have a good support group. You have to find people who care. But it's possible, and some of the best ways to do it are exercise, unfortunately limiting caffeine, and finding support. So if you're ever feeling like that, don't be hesitant to reach out and find connections with people, because that will ultimately help you pull out of that. The issue with mental health is it's growing more and more serious by the year. Since COVID, the suicide rates have gone up significantly, especially in males, and the rates of depression are almost doubled, and that's a serious issue. And I think we as students need to be able to build each other up and address these issues together. That's all I have, and the rest of this presentation will be about solutions, and Dallas is going to start with animal therapy and mentor programs.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
Morning. All right, next slide. Next slide, please. All right. So today, I said I'm going to be going over animal therapy and mentorship. Now, here we have pet therapy. Now, pet therapy is kind of a misleading name. Most people recognize it, but the more professional way to call it is animal assisted therapy, which is also sometimes confused with animal assisted activities, which are two completely different things. Now, our next thing, I'll be going over how Walla Walla can put this into practice, make this available for students. Then I'll go into the mentor programs, which is kind of an extension of something that we already have in place, and how other colleges and other businesses in our world implement mentorship. Okay, so the Mayo Clinic, which is a non-for-profit, American group of people who are in the medical field and do a lot of research, they have an article about animal-assisted therapy. Now, they make it very clear that AAT and AA are completely different things. Animal-assisted activities is something where you have a group of people who may be struggling with the same thing, and they bring in an animal, and that animal helps these people get to a certain task during that session. Where animal-assisted therapy is one-on-one, or one-on-two if you count the animal trainer, and it is more focused on the person who, is being therapized. I guess that's the word. Animal-assisted therapy is a session, not a commitment. You don't get a emotional support animal that you take with you everywhere. It's nothing like that. A trainer comes to you, you have a session for a certain amount of time with that animal, and then the animal leaves and you have that consistently over whatever period of time. This also makes it easier for Walla Walla, so they don't have to have animals in their dorm, but dorm students still have access to the therapy as they need it. Healthline also has another article. The articles are very the same, but Healthline lists a bunch of benefits that come with animal-assisted therapy. Now, these benefits include reducing stress, reducing anxiety, reducing depression, reducing loneliness, it reduces boredom, it makes people more likely to want to engage in social activities, and it actually makes people more likely to want to exercise, which helps with physical health as well. Another thing that they mentioned with children, with the young children, it actually helps them develop empathy skills for later on in life. Next slide. So this is kind of how much insurance kind of covers, certain things. So you can see that 6% is covered by private insurance, 3% by Medicaid, 3% by private Medicaid combo, and then 89% not. So money is a thing. We all know that Walla likes to grab our money all the time. See my calf plans. So it's something that we have to think about. And another thing is allergies. A lot of people, I'm seeing this more and more as I get older, a lot of people are allergic to animals. And sometimes the most random animals too. Now, this is okay because animal-assisted therapy, the animals they use can be a wide range of animals. Dogs, cats, pigs, goats, they got them all, right? And so because of that, we can, have a variety of animals once this system is set up that their people with different allergies don't have to, risk getting sick and having to go to the hospital because they're trying to deal with their stress. Now, for the short term, since obviously Walla does not have this set up, there is a local business in Walla Walla called the Heritage Service Dogs, which for the short term, we could get dogs, actually specifically poodles, and they can work with students for a certain time, who is the ones that aren't allergic to dogs, until Walla Walla can implement a longer standing animal-assisted therapy division. All right, next slide. So now, mentor programs. Now, anyone that was like a freshman here, unless you transfer or something, I don't know if transfer students have it, but you get a mentor, you're assigned to, you have to meet with them like every week. They check up on you most of the time, they remind you to do your financial clearance, to meet with your advisor, stuff like that. Right now, once you're a freshman, or once you stop being a freshman, you no longer have a mentor. You can't meet with them anymore. I mean, you can if you're really good friends, but it's not really assigned. They're gonna focus on the students that they mentee. Now, why are we talking about something that we already have? Well, our plan, or something that we would like to make an option, is that students who feel like they want that connection, they want that person that they can go and talk to who's not their parents or their friends, and to have that extra support, can have that after the freshman year. Now, I've talked to some of my friends, and this it came up naturally. They were talking about it. I was like, man, this is really interesting. How they really wish that they still had their mentor. They're sophomores now. They wish that they really had their mentor, because that really helped them get through their freshman year. And now the sophomore year is even harder, and they don't have that. Yale, which is an Ivy League school in Connecticut, their law school also implements a mentorship program. They also allow like older students to be mentors, stuff like that. Deloitte, which is the biggest accounting and consulting business in the world. My mom actually used to work there before she dropped decent finances to work for the church. They have a mentor program also. And they actually did a study where they had, of their first year workers, 60% of them that chose to come back for a second year came back solely because, it was like 64%, solely because of their mentor. Now, I know you're probably wondering why am I bringing up a business that has nothing to do with college, but college is preparation for the working world. And if you need a mentor in the working world, how much more should it be available for you when you're in university? It's actually interesting, my mom still talks about her mentor at Deloitte all the time, is in contact with them, talks about how much they helped her and everything like that. Now, the program that we would implement, it wouldn't be required, because obviously not everyone's going to want to be stuck with a mentor and have to meet with them every week. But for those who want to, after your freshman year, you can opt in to having a mentor, or you can opt out, and you can choose that, right? Now, we have mentors now. A lot of them have like 20, 25 students as it is. So obviously, we would probably need to get more mentors to not overload the ones that we already have. So we could do this by getting help from the university church. We have a lot of people in there. I'm sure they would all love to do it. So, yeah. Cool. So, now that we've talked about those two things, stress and anxiety, it's not something that can be solved with just one thing, right? Every single person is different, and every single person has a different way of dealing with stress and anxiety. And that's why instead of giving you 2 solutions, we're going to give you 4. And Ryan is going to give you the other 2.
Good morning. I will be talking about the other 2 solutions that we thought about. This one is for specific support groups, and I'm going to be talking about the definition of a support group and like public view or what people usually think of support groups and reasons why support groups are necessary or good, and how we could maybe get support groups for WALL. So the definition of a support group, according to helpguide.org, is a gathering of people facing common issues to share what's troubling them. And the usual consensus on, like, you hear a support group, you think of negative things like AA, or, I don't know, like, maybe childhood trauma, and people come together and talk about stuff like that. But it doesn't necessarily have to be seen as a negative thing. It's because the definition is just people coming together to share issues and to support each other. People who go into support groups don't have to see that as there's something wrong with them if they do, because it's just people coming together to help each other with their problems. The number one reason for a support group is for people to not feel like they're alone in their problems, because with depression, you isolate more, and you're like, oh, I'm the only one in the world that's feeling this. I'm like, my life is horrible, when there's people out there struggling with the same things that you could talk about that with. And support groups are vital for finding information about the issues that you have, that other people have, and maybe they've had that issue for longer and they've seen ways to cope or things like that. And you might not have seen that anywhere else other than with a support group. And support groups are very good for improving social skills and interacting with others who care about you because you care about them and you have the same problems. And because of the isolation, if you have a support group, even if it's more people you've just met, not just like really close friends, it's still people you're interacting with, and that can help you with depression. Support groups could be formed based on majors or departments, or maybe shared interests, or shared issues, maybe like children of divorcees or something like that, or maybe housing, such as Girls Dorm, Guys Dorm, Village, because especially guys, I feel would be more comfortable sharing with just other guys, because maybe they feel like it's kind of being more vulnerable, like girls around, so that's also an option. And having something common, such as majors or interests, is just something you go in and you're like, oh, I already have this in common with these people. You're a little more comfortable, and maybe you want to socialize a little more. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a very like deep thing where you just like go in a circle and you just like talk about all your problems. It could be just more a place where people with the same problems or issues can come together, socialize, have other people, and know that they're not alone. As I said, that's the number one reason for support groups. So the implementation that we thought about is you could set it up a bit like clubs, like I said, with majors or interests or issues. But rather than being set up more like for entertainment or fun, would be more for supporting, talking, things like that. Potential problems with that would be that groups would be too large that people wouldn't feel comfortable, or people would feel like it's a sign of weakness to go to a support group. So my short-term thoughts is that we start small and we keep the group small. So maybe you have like one group and then that's getting a little bigger. So you split that and then it grows from there. And just trying to find genuine people who want to connect on a deeper level and have other people support you. So the next thing I'll be talking about is advertising for therapy or counseling. So I have a scenario for you. So let's say you're feeling overwhelmed from the stress of college, from papers, from social life. So you're debating with yourself, do I maybe schedule therapy or counseling? And you're like, okay, maybe I'll do it. So you call into the counseling and testing counseling center, and you get tossed around. You get put on hold multiple times for like more than an hour, and then you're just like, I don't really. You weren't really wanting to do it, but you kind of like went with, maybe I'll do it, but because of that, you just say, I'll deal with it. So next slide. I think this is an issue that has happened several times, and we actually called in to the counselor, or Evan did, and that's exactly what happened to him. So if he was someone who actually needed help, he wouldn't have gotten that. So we, as proper paying students of the school, we deserve a lot more in terms of mental health services. And with the intense stresses and pressures that we're being put on every day, we need it now more than ever in our lives. And as I said, a lot of students who needed proper mental health care are turned away because hour-long waits on the phone, or if you finally get to talk to someone, then maybe a month or two until your actual appointment. Next slide. So Wawa can do a lot better. So they should be prioritizing mental health for their students by budgeting more funds to hire more counselors and have them available for longer hours. Marketing therapy on the Wawa Instagram accounts or their website. It always feels on the website that it's like tucked away in the back. You have to like go and like find it and go all the way in to get like a phone number or something. So it shouldn't be like that. They could create flyers or posters for educating the student population for their resources, because a lot of people don't even know like what's available for them. And they could make connections with the mental health clinics in the community for maybe if they couldn't get more counselors here, they could perhaps connect students with mental health clinics in the community and maybe help with the cost and stuff like that. Next. Yeah, so those four solutions are things that I think can be done on campus, and probably the last one is probably the easiest to implement. But the pet therapy, the mentors, the support groups, and just advertising, all those can help the mental health services on campus and for the student population, which needs it now more than ever, as I said before.
All right, guys, so I will go ahead and close this out. Thank you for listening today, and I had wanted to just share briefly what we do have in terms of resources right now that could potentially help. I wanted to highlight the site Mental Health Network of wallawalla.com, because it is actually a really great resource, because you can input specifically what it is that you're looking for, what type of insurance you have or don't have, and what kind of help you are seeking, and it will give you a list of all the available therapists and psychologists that are here to help. So today we have covered causes and effects relating to stress on college campuses, and our solutions might not be perfect, but I think they are doable, because we should strive to want to help people in their pursuit of wanting to get better. We should really, really help that. And I just want to end it by saying that what happens to us is not our fault. It is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. And building resilience is a requirement of life. Thank you.